Morning, Emmett.
Andrew, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? How's things?
Yeah, very good, very good. How you getting on there?
All good. Yeah. Aside from the weather heating up, there seems to be a bit of people kind of heading out of town at the moment. So I think the entire population of Dubai seems to be in Greece this week. That's what I
I've
seen.
Yeah, I've seen my social media is just literally filled with holiday pictures at the moment. So pretty interesting.
Yeah, they seem to. I think Greece have got an open door policy at the moment, so it seems to be quite a popular jaunt, let's say. But other than that, it's good. Yeah, we've got Eid coming up, obviously regionally in the next week. So busy this week. Just kind of a lot of people trying to see us to kind of close some stuff off before we head into the week long break, as it were.
Okay.
So yeah, I think busy. How's things for you?
Yeah, really good. Just getting super busy, but yeah, like rocking and rolling, mate. So cool. So
Excellent.
guys, there's people dropping in. So thanks to those who joined already. We normally just give it a couple of minutes just to allow others to kind of join the show. And great, we've got some new faces as well by the looks of it, which is very nice.
Just remind people that we can't see their face, Emmett, otherwise they get a bit worried. We can't see your face, guys.
New names.
That's it. We can see some new names that are popping in. So yeah, obviously this is I think it's our second or third episode of summer series.
This is the third one of the summer.
That's it. Yeah. So summer survivor series, as it were, that we kind of coined it. So obviously the Growth Show been going over a year now. So those of you that are new, thank you for joining us. Those of you who can see some old faces as well, old names, thanks for kind of continuing to support us. And we're kind of diving into a biggie today, right? We're talking CRM.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've got there's a lot to talk about. Normally last week we struggled for time, right? We ended up running way over the hour, but yeah, there's a lot to talk about here. I think we've got we'll break it down in terms of, I guess, how the kind of CRM has evolved from what it was to what it is now, and really, I guess, more kind of tactical and practical, I think, is really kind of our approach. So we want to just make sure that the insights, the information that we provide is very kind of relevant and applicable to businesses. And obviously, I think just to kind of lay it out there, we obviously have a lot of CRM focused conversations with clients and prospects as well, right? In terms of helping them to understand why they need a CRM, what they need it for. And so there's a kind of position of experience in terms of really kind of identifying those features of a kind of modern day CRM that companies really need to kind of have, right, and be using.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 100%. It's almost a daily conversation, Emmett. With people at kind of varying degrees as far as where they are currently, how they understand that CRM space. So I think hopefully we'll kind of be able to answer some of those questions that pop up. Yeah, like I said, almost on a daily basis at the moment for me.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. So I think just while others are dropping in, I can see some new, some additional people joining. So anything caught your eye in the news this week, Andrew, before we start the CRM piece?
Yeah, it's becoming a bit of an Amazon show for our news, but there's usually something interesting from Amazon. And what kind of sparked my interest this week was just they've got the go-ahead to track you while you're asleep with the use of a kind of radar in the States. So the Federal Communications Commission gave e-commerce the clearance basically to create almost like a bedside radar attached to your Alexa, right, or your Echo. And I thought this was kind of wildly interesting. I'm talking later on a podcast about issues of privacy and what's being tracked, and you almost feel like when you're in bed asleep, you're done at that point, right? So unless you're wearing a Whoop or something, from a kind of medical or resting device, you almost feel like you're safe. But the angle for this has been very much around people that effectively use not just like voice commands for you and I, but gestures. So imagine some of the gestures. I think this was quite popular with TVs when I think about it a few years ago, where you'd kind of wave to turn the volume up and down on your Samsung TV. So now what they're saying is potentially with gestures, or even people that are unable to communicate vocally, they could use sign language to interact with their Echo. or interact with their Alexa, which is so. When I first saw the headline, I thought that's a bit creepy. But then when they kind of went on to explain the practical application of it, it feels like actually kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah, I think if you look at it from that perspective, that does make sense. I mean, well, especially now with all the connected apps and sort of connected digital homes, right? In terms of lighting and alarm systems, I guess all of that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, look, there's still a lot more talk about Amazon being broken up into, they're saying 4 different companies now.
Right.
And Amazon are obviously trying to fight this as much as they can. But essentially, those 4 businesses just need to, I guess what they need to do right now is really try and build those out independently as strong as they can in case they are forced to build these out, right?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And if you're looking at, the cloud business is obviously still huge and probably the most profitable start for the retail business. But there'll be other elements as well. So if you look at what they're trying to do, in terms of their own devices and things like that, I think that's going to be a huge kind of data and intelligence part as well. So yeah, interesting.
Yeah. What caught your eye?
Yeah, I think the obviously the big news this week was obviously about Branson in space, and or was he? Because if you listen to SpaceX and Elon Musk, then apparently they didn't really kind of reach that threshold of whatever it is, right? Which is quite interesting. But it's quite funny that on one side you've got Musk and Branson, posing for photographs together, and then on the other side there's tweets going out from SpaceX saying, "Listen, he didn't really go at space.
Really go at space, mate."
Yeah. So it's quite funny. But I mean that battle, and I don't know. I think we're going to end up talking about it a lot in the future. But the fact that you've now got kind of Musk, Bezos, and Branson all kind of competing in that, this sort of space tourism business, I think is just huge, right? So I think that's going to be massively exciting.
I mean, they're talking about practical application of it as well, right? So you could kind of, jettison up and then land in New York in an hour and 20 minutes. Because you basically don't obviously go like this. The world is flat anyway, right? So these guys are just going like that. But obviously they're talking about coming up and coming down and getting to New York in like 50 minutes or something, which is insane. I just wonder what the pre-flight safety checks. So the flight's actually 2 hours, but the pre-flight safety checks is 6. So it's kind of like
it's quite funny way, right? And this is what I like about Branson, because again, I think these guys have all got very kind of similar traits, right? So if you look at Bezos, you look at Musk, and if you look at Branson took his little notepad up there with him, and it's like, I've seen about 40 things which need to change by the time we let our first passengers come on board, right? Because he'll spot the little things which nobody else will spot, right? In the same way that Musk will spot things in his Teslas that nobody else will ever spot. And I think the same with Bezos when it comes to maybe the UX of Amazon, right? There'll just be certain things that they can identify,
continually improve.
But they'll have consultants and experts paid millions of dollars a year who still won't identify these things, right? And these guys will just spot it straight away. And I think that's I love stuff like that, because it just shows still how passionate these guys are in terms of what they do. But I saw one more thing here which really caught my eye this week, and I'm going to see if you can identify which place it is.
Yep.
So there's a new kind of almost hottest country for startups and startup investments.
Okay.
And any ideas where it is?
I mean, things seem pretty hot here. The kind of ecosystem is set up quite nicely for people to set up, and obviously there's oodles of cash in this part of the world. So I'd lean towards UAE first, just because I've seen so much kind of buzz and noise around it. So opening up visas and stuff. But I'd kind of lean into that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a kind of watch for space move at the moment, but it actually isn't. So the country that's sort of been identified at the moment as one of the hottest is Egypt, and I think there's a couple of kind of interesting reasons for that. But obviously we know there's a lot of sort of technological talent that's obviously in Egypt.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that it's now being recognized in Silicon Valley as this kind of new hot up and coming startup place, I think is interesting. And obviously some of those kind of ignorant Americans that are out there have now turned Silicon Mummy as the new place in Egypt, right? So, it's like, okay, guys, come on. And then I heard stuff about, as long as there's no kind of pyramid schemes involved, we're in, and we're like, it's honestly, I swear to God, I've read 3 or 4 news articles on this, and all of them have referenced Silicon Mummy and pyramids. And it just shows. I mean, but anyway, there's obviously much more to it. But they're raising significant money. I mean, this is the point, and there's some huge kind of unicorn potential startups that are raising 30, 40, 50 million dollars per round, and I think that's quite it's quite cool. But I was just going to say, the second reason why it's interesting, I don't know if you remember a conversation we had with a big tech firm who was predicted this. Do you remember that?
Yeah, 2 years ago, right? No, nearly 3 years ago.
Yeah, so that was Google, right? Where we sat there and
based on an algorithm.
Yeah, their team basically looked at it and said, okay, guys, based on our algorithm, based on the trends that we can spot, the next hottest place is Egypt. And that was a while back, but just super interesting in terms of the data and access that some of these companies have got, where they can literally say, like, this is the place that you need to be looking at, which is
they were the only people that were telling us that at the time. There was no one else, because when we sat down with them, if you remember, they said, listen, we want to kind of look at some opportunities with you guys. And we were like, no, we're good. Saudi's kind of looking good. They're like, no, Egypt. And we're like, okay, brilliant. It's good stuff. I think we ought to start listening to ourselves sometimes. I mean, what with crypto and what with some of these other things.
Yeah, probably, mate. Probably. There you go.
Excellent.
So
good stuff.
So awesome. So again, thanks to everyone who's just tuned in the last few minutes. I think what we want to do is I think it's a big topic, Andrew. I think we just need to kind of dive straight in, if I'm honest.
Because, we'll jump in.
Just so that we can try and finish on the dot this week.
But
it was interesting, I think, when we were trying to understand and plan out this show, CRM is always kind of like, it's always front of mind, because I think we kind of, live within our own CRM. And also, like what we said previously, we have a lot of conversations about CRM. With clients and with prospects and people who are kind of really kind of looking to digitally transform their businesses.
That's right.
But it was good, because I think it's been a while since we've spoken specifically about the CRM, and I think there's good reason for that. I think it's such a kind of it's a live animal, so to speak, right? And I'll give you an idea. Obviously, we use Hubspot. And I received the June updates newsletter a couple of days back from Hubspot. And just on the CRM alone, I think there was about 25 different updates in the last month, right? And you just look at it going, this is just nuts. I mean, because every single month you look at it and it's just evolving at a pace which is just frenetic, right? There's just so much going on, and every single change you're looking at it going, that's awesome, that's awesome, that's awesome. So it's all stuff that we probably don't realize we need. But the second it's implemented, you're looking at it going, how did we survive without this? And I think
that's right.
And I think back, when you talk about a CRM, I think it's the same thing, right? How did we survive without the CRM being in place, right? And I think and it's quite interesting. But I don't know. I guess before we dive in, I mean, what's your kind of experience of conversations that you have in terms of maturity, in terms of the businesses that you're talking to? What they've got in place, what they perhaps haven't got in place. What's your kind of overall kind of high level experience of it?
Yeah, it's interesting, because it's across the board. So there's some organizations, like, so if we look at the multinationals, let's start with those guys. The multinationals are kind of enterprise layer. You've got a real mix. You've got obviously people that are actively involved on a CRM platform. You've got some other organizations that globally they have a CRM, but regionally they don't use that CRM, which I find interesting. So they kind of
they're not allowed to use a CRM regionally. I've come across that.
And it's usually for 2 reasons. One is we're currently implementing a new CRM, and that may go on for 18 months. So people kind of in the meantime have to kind of let their wheels spin. And then also, as you said, a lot of them are just not allowed, to use the CRM, because it's geared up for other parts of the world. So see that from an enterprise and multinational organization. Then you see, when you kind of move down a bit to mid-size, there's either, kind of two extremes: people running around with no CRM, so not even a basic data capture, still post-it notes and things like that. If we look at from a sales perspective, and then you've got some other people that have kind of jumped into Google and said best free CRMs, right? Or best CRMs, and kind of gone into G2 and made those comparisons and kind of start to mangle their way through, and try and set themselves up accordingly. But I think the interesting thing is that in all scenarios, one other thing that's kind of almost forgotten is, effectively when you pull a CRM out of its box, it doesn't just work for you from day one. You as an organization have to have some element of process. You have to have, some idea of kind of what that is. So I think that's where that gap is usually, right? There's usually a gap between, oh, this is going to solve all my problems. This is going to help me track sales. This is going to help me convert. This is going to help me in my overall operation of the business. And obviously there's other gaps or cracks, let's say.
No, that's a good point, because I think we've seen that obviously multiple times where people have basically said, look, I've got a CRM in place and, but it doesn't really help. Okay, well, is everyone using it? No. The people who are using it, does it work for them? Well, typically, yes. But again, I think it comes down to process, it comes down to internal rules, it comes down to a whole host of things, right? But I think I guess the main thing, and it's funny when we go into organizations, especially those older organizations, and they've been running for many years, very highly successful. And then we say, look, let's kind of have a look at your sales process. They kind of look at us funny and say, well, we're a $1 billion business, and we're like, we get it, but mapping a CRM now into that $1 billion business, I think still requires that process, right? It requires a strategy. Needs some understanding of every single kind of touch point from a sales perspective, the deal stages that are required, what the complexities are of each stage. And I think those are the things that really kind of surprise people when we go through that process with them, because you just take so many things for granted, right? Because we know how to sell. And I think that's a key part. And actually that also is one of the biggest kind of areas of resistance. Well, we know how to sell, right? We know how to do this, we know how to do that. We don't need a system that kind of tells us what to do, and we don't really need to track it, because we sell 5 of these things a year, but those 5 things are equal to $20 million or whatever it is, right? Exactly. And so it's quite interesting, those kind of conversations that we have, and types of industries as well. But yeah, I think you're totally right. I think and it still seems, tell me if I'm wrong, but it still seems like there's a wide gulf in terms of, again, even if we look at enterprise level companies, people that have got things in place on one side, and those people who still have very much nothing in place, or an Excel sheet on the other side, right? And it's it's spread, right? Everywhere in between.
Yeah, and I think the challenge is as well that, especially in the last, let's say, 5 years, where digital transformation has been a big, kind of buzz. I think obviously usually leading that is IT and strategy. Originally, I think there has been a bit of a shift to sales and marketing and ownership for that digital transformation. And that's when they start considering things like a CRM, because even in some of those early conversations when we're talking about digitizing our business, they digitize process, but they don't attach it to the kind of customer data piece, as it were, or client data. There's still a very much a, okay, that's just there,
Yeah, you know what, you're totally right. But I think the biggest problem with digital transformation is actually the fact that it's called digital transformation. It's just far too big a beast. And that's when you speak to companies and they're like, right, we need digital transformation. And you hear company owners and sort of key executives talking about this. And then when you start to kind of say, okay, well, which part? They're like, well, kind of all of it. And then the second you get into that conversation, nothing's going to happen, right? Because it's just far too big a project. I think the key to this is internally, where we've been working with internal stakeholders within the company, we've broken that down and said, look, let's not talk about digital transformation. Let's talk about sales transformation first and foremost, right? Let's then talk about marketing transformation. Let's talk about maybe customer service transformation. And the second you start to break these down into more kind of digestible silos, irrespective of the size of your business, actually things become implementable, right? And building out a strategy, small bites rather than, just one sort of huge project, which ultimately is 2 or 3 years, right? But I think part of that, like I said, it's bizarre. When the second you say, "Look, guys, let's not call it that," because you're not going to get sign off on that, and you're not going to sign off a budget on that. Let's just focus on this area, show the impact, and then roll out the others. So I think that's kind of like, you know, the way I think it makes sense kind of moving forward.
Yeah, definitely. No, I agree.
So Andrew, I want to play a little game with you.
Amazing.
Because I know how much you hate that, but basically, if we look at the evolution of a CRM, right? And I again, just in preparation for this topic today, I thought it'd be quite good fun just to go back and almost look at the history of a CRM. And so the first ever CRM that I used, and I think it was kind of early 2000s, I guess, was ACT. Do you remember ACT?
Yeah. Blast from the past.
Yeah, which when it's so funny when I was looking at it, and I saw some old screenshots of ACT, and I was like, that looks like Salesforce today, which is quite bizarre. But I think that's a whole new topic. But anyway, so I'm gonna throw some company names at you, and I want you to try and just tell me when these were founded, because it helps us to really kind of define where CRM is today, I guess, right, in terms of that evolution. Because a lot of companies we speak to kind of really see CRM as, okay, that started with Salesforce, and you know, Salesforce is a today very much a cloud business and blah blah blah. But there's much more to it, and I think the history of a CRM goes way back. But we'll start with ACT. When do you think ACT was founded, Andrew?
I don't know. You kind of gave a clue away with early 2000s, but I think it might have been before that. So let's do. They were kind of excited to the millennium when we all thought everything was going to crash. Remember with 00. So let's do 98.
No, so it's 1986 was ACT. Which again just gives you an idea as to, like, you know, what we're talking about here. This one's interesting. The first mobile CRM was created by Siebel. Do you remember Siebel?
Yeah, but again, early 2000s.
Yeah, so that was 1999.
Right. Okay. All right.
Right. So imagine that, right? So again, we're talking about mobile CRM. Understanding you've got salespeople out on the road. So that's 22 years ago. Salesforce.
Is this something to just make you feel old? Because it was my birthday a couple of weeks ago, so it's just kind of like a reminder of how old I am. Salesforce is actually a bit tough because I looked this up. I think they're like 2005 or something, aren't they? And they're close to us.
1999 again.
Right. Okay.
Eloqua. And Eloqua was very interesting because these was guys who very much looked at Salesforce and looked at the automation and those elements and decided, okay, actually, you know, we need to build a system that kind of starts to look at marketing and sales. And that's, again, part of that evolution has been there. But when was Eloqua formed, mate? When do you think?
2008.
Again, 1999. Which is really interesting, right? So you see, and they're still obviously very owned by Oracle today, but very much at the forefront of sort of marketing automation and CRM. And Dynamics.
Microsoft Dynamics. I wonder when it became Dynamics. I feel like Dynamics is probably early as well. So I'd go 99. Let's do 99.
Okay, 2003. This is, I'm trying to make it easy for you, mate. Look, it's all in order and everything as well. But
amazing.
There we go. And then the last one, HubSpot, which you should know.
I know. As soon as you said about this, I'm like, he's going to ask me about HubSpot, isn't he? It's close to us, right?
Yeah.
I think they're younger than us, though. So then to 2000 and 2008. Go on, do 2008.
2006. Which again, I think is really interesting, mate. If you look at HubSpot today, again, 15 years on. I mean, 15 years is still a long time, right? And then what you've got now is very much a kind of modern CRM and ecosystem, which I think really kind of encompasses. So that journey, very much, if we kind of look at it from top to bottom, is you've got, you know, Act, which is again very kind of desktop based. It was quite clunky, lots of windows. It was very kind of Microsoft Windowsy in terms of how it worked. Kind of glorified Excel sheets essentially, but done a really good job from a sales perspective, from a database management perspective. And then obviously you've gone the mobile side with Siebel, Salesforce, obviously the cloud there. And then where you've got Eloquent, which is now, obviously the marketing automation side of it. Dynamics the same, where it starts to really kind of merge the CRM and the marketing components. And then HubSpot today, which is again, you know, it's all singing, all dancing from a sales, a marketing, and operations, a customer service, all kind of natively integrated into one app. And I think you know, when it's interesting because when you start to look at that evolution, it very much does bring us to today, right? And I thought what would be good, again, you know, like I said, we want to keep this show very kind of practical and very tactical. I felt it would be really good to maybe look at what we do from a CRM perspective as well, right? You know, and I think we'll touch on that in a second. But I think, you know, again, let's go back to the conversations that we have. You know, I think there's still a lot of people today who still kind of look at the CRM more in its traditional use. So, for example, I never have anyone who comes up to me and says, listen, I need a CRM because I want to kind of align my marketing operation and sales. I mean, that conversation never happens, right? So when people are talking about CRM for you, what is it that they're trying to achieve? What is that kind of driving reason for them to have that conversation?
So always heavily sales focused. There's usually in this part of the world an element of tracking people. So they kind of that trust, and I'd say almost more so with kind of some of the kind of stuff that's gone through with COVID. There's a trust factor. So okay, how many meetings you're having, how many, you know, because ultimately we know that sales is a numbers game. So you know, I think it's that, and then also with the numbers. So you know, trying to understand from a sales management perspective, and then perhaps hierarchically in the company. They can get overview on kind of numbers. So it's still very much a sales focused environment. It's not really used as an effective sales tool, let's say. Again, it's more for tracking and reporting, right? That's kind of, even though your CRM may do a whole host of other things, and as you said, we'll dive into that. I think traditionally it's still very much seen as that. And then also there are some organizations that use it as part of a process. So, you know, the sales piece will be used to issue an invoice or something like that. So very much kind of process for accounts versus and getting money versus, you know, actually enhancing the whole operation.
Okay. So let's flip that on its head then, right? So what should people be using it? I mean, because like when you talk about reporting and you talk about, you know, the tracking and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That very much feels historical, right? You're reporting on yesterday's events rather than tomorrow's events, right? So I mean, that seems like one kind of obvious area, but I don't know what is the potential of a CRM today? I mean, let's kind of outline that.
Look, I think first and foremost, I think that essentially what it should be used at is kind of one true view of your client or prospect, right? Or customer, right? So you know, we come across a lot of the time where customer data is scattered, right? It's sitting on people's desktops, it's sitting on systems, it's in drives, it's kind of all over the place. It's not centralized, it's not clean. It doesn't have a singular format. So I think first and foremost, you know, it has to be used as that centralized space for all of your prospects and client data, right? It should live in there effectively, because if you've got a scattered environment, there's no ability to effectively use that data, right? So it's useless at that point. You know, I think the thing is that possibly people don't realize the power of that. We've spoken about it previously, where you know, data is just kind of given, and ultimately, you know, it's not dissected. So I think first and foremost, that's there, and that's important because it essentially gives you, you know, an entire breakdown and historical view of that particular data record, right? So as soon as you centralize all of that information, you have the ability to understand, where this individual came from. Was it like a pop-up in a shopping mall, or was it an online form? Was it a form in Facebook, or was it wherever, right? So you have the ability to understand where that kind of person came from. And then ultimately, you should have the ability, and obviously we'll talk a bit about it, but you should have the ability to understand the conversations that have happened with that individual, either be it a automated at a brand level or a salesperson individual level, right? So we understand the relationship that you have with that particular contact record, as it were. So I think that also is important to understand, right? So it's not just a data field, a name and a number, it's everything associated to that name and number.
So you're talking about almost like a full kind of historical kind of life cycle of and journey of that client with your business, essentially, right?
Exactly. You should be able exactly. You should be able to punch a card and see effectively, what's going to happen, right, with this individual. And look at it in a very kind of raw sense. The fact is that you could have a prospect that kind of falls through the door, looks incredibly hot. You pull up the data and you see that this particular individual, for the past 3 years running, has engaged with you. So clearly you are one of 3 quotations. You never win that business. So you may decide not to engage with that prospect, for example. So, by kind of pulling in analytical and historical data, you can start to determine what to do with that particular inquiry, right?
Okay. All right, cool. What else do you think? Is there anything else, but in terms of what people should be using for?
I think the thing is, with that in mind, just that, and we've spoken about this a couple of times, but the way that people are realigning their focus on time is crucial. So, across the board now, people will kind of seem to be valuing their time more, seem to be more organized in their time, due to the fact that a lot of people working from home, obviously. So you're trying to work around different schedules, perhaps. And the fact is that by having, historical data, by having every single element associated to this individual, you are able to prioritize how you engage with them. So even down to, speaking to a particular prospect, sending them proposals, are they opening your emails? Are they looking at the proposals? Are they watching the videos that you send to them, either kind of personalized videos or video content that you may have kind of pulled through? Are they even bothering opening your PDF, your company profile? All of these things can help you to determine if that individual is more likely to close. So I'd say using it from a conversion perspective as well.
So better conversions.
Increased conversions, better conversion rates. Yeah.
What about kind of from a service and product offering? Do you think there's any kind of potential there?
Yeah. I think obviously, with that in mind, when you're looking at this data, and obviously then if we move away from a contact record and we start looking at a CRM from a deal value perspective, so where we're associating particular deals to individuals or organizations, we have the ability then to effectively see what's being sold, right? And how long it's taking to be sold. What's that sales cycle look like? And it may differ. So it may differ across, different products and service offerings inside your own organization. And more importantly, the margins may be affected on that as well. So you can start to use, the CRM and deal data to understand how long something takes to close, for example, versus, other products and services. So this may mean that you want to realign your product or service offering, or you may want to kind of remove one particular service, possibly, or add other services on the back of how people are interacting. And again, when you start to capture data on in the CRM space, you're capturing other things. So you're not just only capturing name and email, but depending on the type of contact sphere that you want to create, you're using that to capture more data. So maybe, for example, in 6 months' time, when you look at your conversion ratio for deals, you break down startups, mid-size and kind of enterprise or multinational companies, and you can see in 6 months' time, well, actually, it may be we did this exercise ourselves. It was like, well, who do you think your clients are? And you kind of think, well, mid-size, possibly, but no, it's actually all enterprise. Those are the ones that are closing. So then it's about using that data to then target those particular accounts again in the future, which you can use the CRM for. So you can build out targeted accounts that you can go after.
Yeah. Just I think we've spoken about kind of, and I think that kind of comes into kind of future strategy and stuff. But what about from a forecasting perspective? I mean, how intelligent can we get with predictions, right? How do we predict, sales revenues? How do we kind of use the CRM for that?
Yeah, I think it's interesting what we just spoke about with Google, right? And how they use an algorithm to predict that Egypt is going to be the next great place. I think that the prediction and the forecasting is only really as valuable as the data that kind of comes in. And we say a lot, data in, data out. So as long as you're kind of, collecting the right parameters that would ultimately help you forecast, I think that's ultimately going to be beneficial. Now, the challenge at the moment with forecasting is kind of COVID and how that's kind of jumbled things a bit. But you can definitely see patterns, right? You can see patterns in how long, as I said, for example, it may take something to close. So if you're looking at, perhaps deal value, the larger the deal, the longer it takes to close, or, if you've got a whole procurement process, you can start to kind of dissect that data, and you can start to almost, tier that data, so you can start to see, well, potentially this time last year we were sitting at this, but in a very real sense as well, it could be month-on-month basis. So it may be sitting here right now and saying, well, look, my sales team had completed 100 meetings and 300 calls by this time last month. We're 20% down. What's happening, right? So again, unless you are in a very transactional environment like an e-commerce or a retail, a lot of these, the impact of your activity is felt a month, 2 months, 3 months afterwards. So you can start to see, even month on month, if there's a dip or a spike, how to make those adjustments. So I think that's where you kind of look at the numbers and look at the data and start to pull that in.
Yeah, look, and I think that's very tactical as well, because we've seen it with clients where we've basically had that ability to see their pipeline and see those sales cycles. And I think there's one that comes into mind where they said, look, it takes us about 2 months to close a deal. The data showed it was about 3.5 months. But the nice part of that is the second you see that there is a shortfall in terms of, say, leads that have come in, again, they're not going to feel that impact now. They're going to feel that impact in about 3.5 months' time, right?
Yeah.
And at that point, it might be too late, right? Because it might take you another 3.5 months to kind of recover that. And so, we've had it in the past where we said, look, what you need to do now is just get more aggressive on campaigns for the next 4 weeks, or there's a trade show opportunity next month, or there's this, where you can actually fast track and kind of fill your funnel, but not just fill it, but fast track people through the funnel, so that this shortfall that you've got in the future is now actually filled right now. And I think the second you have access to that kind of data and analysis and be able to kind of make sort of actionable steps to kind of either solve a problem, or even if it's a case of you've been set a target and you look at that target and say, look, there's no way I can do that unless I do this first, and this is how much time I have to get that in place. I mean, again, the CRM can really kind of help with that, and that data piece is absolutely sort of critical. And we haven't shared it yet, but I think it was on our LinkedIn. I shared it on my LinkedIn, but HubSpot's new advert. There's a little line in there. So if you guys haven't seen this, it's worth looking at. But there's a new kind of TV commercial that HubSpot just launched, and I think it's rolling out in the States at the moment. But one of the lines in that, I'm not sure if you remember, Andrew, is where they're talking about how wonderful the CRM is and how it's going to change the whole life of this company that they focused in on. And one of the bits in there was one of the staff saying, amazing. So these, totally unrealistic targets set by our CEO, it's going to help us to achieve that. And but it just shows that actually, it may not do that, but what it does allow you to do is kind of really understand how realistic certain things are, and allows you to kind of then pre-plan to try and overcome some of those challenges, right?
Exactly. No, and I think you kind of leaned into that a bit there when you were speaking about breaking the CRM piece out of its sales environment, because then you're using data from a sales perspective to then go and have a conversation with marketing, right? So instead of and I think this sometimes where we see that misalignment between kind of sales and marketing, we've seen it just in the last couple of days with some prospects we've been talking to, where departments are misaligned. So effectively, marketing are given a budget, and that budget again is based on numbers. sometimes plucked out of thin air, or based on last year's plus 10%, right, or plus 8%.
Sure.
You know, and that's that. I think obviously budgets have to be allocated for certain activity, but similar, you know, now we do live in that digital space where there has to be a bit of flexibility. There has to be, you know, the ability to be proactive on the back of sales data, for example, to then launch a campaign, like you said. You know, we're not achieving the numbers and we can see we're not doing that. So we need to go out there and market ourselves a bit better, or we go after a different market. And I think that at the moment is still fairly disjointed in most organizations.
Yeah, right? It's such an important point. And it's, but you know, slowly there's, I think, some changes towards that. I think we're seeing a lot more kind of marketing and sales alignment. You know, marketing are kind of now starting to realize, not in every organization, but certainly more than maybe a couple of years ago, marketing are now taking a bit more responsibility in terms of sales, and sales are actually involving marketing more within their processes, right? Because I think this is, you know, the second you have that, where you've got a sales and marketing team working together and very aligned in terms of their focus and strategy. I mean, great things happen within companies from a kind of commercial perspective. And when that's not in place, I think we have this challenge. I mean, look, we're going through it right now internally for ourselves, right? You know, where marketing is very much kind of driving a lot of what sales will be doing in terms of trying to achieve some targets we've set. But it is marketing. I mean, if we look at it, we've got 4 marketing people plus a support team that are actually working on our sales stuff at the moment.
Exactly.
You know, and this is, it's just critical. I mean, it doesn't really work without that. But anyway, look, we've got about sort of 20 minutes. But I thought what would be good, Andrew, very good, again, just on our practical piece, is to really go through what we use our CRM for. Because, like I said, I think there's a lot of people, when I have conversations about CRM, they don't really they know about a sales tracking piece, they know about maybe the forecasting, they know about maybe, okay, you can send some emails and communication, but they don't really know some of the other features that exist. So I thought it might be quite good just to go into maybe some of the features that we use, for ones that maybe aren't so front of mind. And also just to show what kind of capabilities there, any kind of experience we have with that, I think that'd be quite cool. But
okay, yeah, cool, sounds good.
Yeah, so look, I think one of the first things that we use our CRM for is automation, and then add in, so obviously whatever comes to mind, Andrew. But from an automation perspective, one of the things that I kind of strongly believe in is that we should kind of rely less on humans as much as possible, right? In terms of, you know, we're all busy, we get distracted. And when we get distracted, we sometimes miss certain things. We're not as efficient as potentially a machine is, right? As long as it's been programmed in the right way. And what these kind of modern day CRMs allow us to do, and what allows Nexa to do, for example, is put that automation really in place, right? So things like, you know, sending a follow-up to a proposal that's gone out there, sending a notification that basically says, hey, this person has just now opened your email, this person has now just opened your proposal, do you want to kind of contact them? You know, it's as simple as somebody filling out an inquiry form and us responding very efficiently within a couple of minutes, saying, hey, thanks for your inquiry, here's a link to book a meeting with us, right? And just using very kind of simple tools like that. But that automation piece for me, I think, is really critical, because like I said, it removes that human error, right? The things that we just get distracted with, we forget, we put it off till tomorrow, and then tomorrow never comes. So I think that's one of the key things for me. What about you? Another feature?
Yeah, just on that automation piece, I think that, you know, it's just a replacement of those sticky notes. You know, you still see that in a lot of offices, kind of sticky notes all over the place. So I think, you know, there's tools available there that can automate certain tasks. So even if it's someone that says, hey, listen, I had an example, you know, listen, we're hiring a new marketing manager, can you get back to me in 2 months? Now, previously, that may have popped in, but most likely not. Now there's a reminder to the point where you can schedule an email. So you can write that email now, which I actually did, you know, and scheduled it in 2 months' time. So, you know, you can really kind of use the automation piece. I think one of the things that really kind of helps from a prospect perspective is lead scoring. So I think even, prior to talking to an individual on the phone, as much as we have a whole pre-qualification process inside Nexa, the ability to look at a score straight away and understand, does this person know who we are? So increasingly what we've done at Nexa is we've almost tried to negate that question. So I think for the first time ever, I spoke about us 3 days ago. And that's very rare. Usually, from a score perspective, I can see that this particular individual has, visited 5+ pages, they've watched a blog, they may have watched a growth show, they know who we are, right? And I think that lead scoring piece is important. It's also adaptive, so it's something that you don't just implement once and you kind of click it and forget it. It evolves, right? And scoring, I think, broken down in 2 pieces. And I think if I'll talk about the engagement piece, I think Amit, if you take over from a fit perspective, but like an engagement piece, that's something that we've had in place for many years, based on how individuals, what research are they doing about you as an organization, your previous customers, your kind of perhaps your team, etc. Some of these questions that essentially some of this data that means that they're more interested versus somebody that comes in and goes to a careers page, for example, where they get minus scores. And we've been doing that for many years, but I guess recently we've just been looking at this Nexa fit as well, right?
Yeah, and I think just on that engagement piece, so what we track is website views, specific pages. So if someone's visiting a specific page, we perhaps score that differently. If they're filling out forms, if they're watching videos, if any kind of interaction. And then you're right, yeah, in terms of the career side of it, if we do then see someone going onto the careers page, we perhaps negatively score that, right? Just to sort of qualify.
Exactly.
And what that allows us to do is just understand that, okay, look, someone has scored a score of 25. And I was looking at some analysis of some contracts that we've won in the last few months. And our average score is really high, in terms of, people who have literally been on our website 7 times, 8 times, viewed 40 or 50 pages, read articles, done all of that kind of stuff, and they've scored to a certain point where actually I think the sales process would have been relatively easy on the back of it. The fit piece, and I think this is interesting because this is something that we're kind of implementing now, just to really kind of refine it. But I think all of us know, all of us in business know who a good customer fit is, but it's quite interesting when you speak to people, they're like, well, it could be this kind of company or that kind of company. Typically it's not, right? Typically, that this kind of business, and that could be based on company size, it could be industry, it could be, how much, what a revenue is, it could be based on that. Location is obviously a key point for most businesses. So where are these guys located in the world? Is that market mature enough for our business? And ultimately what we're trying to identify, again, using scoring and using data and numbers and metrics, is to understand, okay, look, is this a good fit client for us? Right? And if they are, you can start to map this into almost like a 2-dimensional graph where you've got engagement as one side, fit on the other. And ultimately what you're trying to do is create a matrix, right? Where, a certain, box within your metrics is your ideal fit customer because they're fully engaged and they're the right kind of client that you want to work with, and that you can produce results with. And I think this is really that kind of data and intelligence piece. And once we have that scoring, we know who we need to focus on, right? But I think we always talk about no 2 leads are ever the same. Well, this is scoring is that real kind of intelligence behind that, right? Because I think as salespeople, when I think pre-CRM, actually pre-CRM, let's talk about Nexa 10 years ago, right? We were doing things like, okay, every single lead has to be contacted and treated in the same way, which is the right, fair sort of way of doing it, right? Except every single lead has a completely different motivation. And like what you said, we would spend hours trying to chase down people who wanted just 1, 3 or 4 quotes because they've got a mate who they're going to give a business to anyway. Right. And so we would spend so much time and actually waste so much time with those prospects. That just doesn't happen today because we're looking at lead scoring, and we can identify those people that need 3 quotes very quickly because they go on the homepage, they go to the contact us page and they fill out a form, and then that's it. They never come again. Right. And so we can just disqualify those using data without even having those conversations. And I think that is powerful. So lead scoring for sure. There's one that we use. I mean, we use obviously the database side of it. I think our database at the moment is huge. It's about 70,000 people who've sort of engaged with us. But I think one of the things is the reason for why that database is so big is every single form we have on our website, every single communication touch point on our website is integrated into the CRM. And that's even including things like the live, the chatbots, the live chat. I mean, all of those different elements are designed to help generate data. And I think then using that data from a communication standpoint is powerful. And obviously we use it for growth show, marketing, we use it for the magazine. I mean, so many different areas, but I think having basically the ability just to capture data at any single digital touch point, I think is huge. And I think that's one of the key things as well that I use it for.
Yeah, and it helps us, like you said, strip out that data as well and start to analyze it a bit more. Is it someone that we want to keep engaged? Is it someone that needs a bit of nurturing? They might not be ready to work with Nectar at the moment, but down the road they might be based on their preferences of what they kind of engage with us, right?
Yeah.
I tell you what, the one thing that's so in the past when we've kind of integrated CRMs to clients, the big pushback has always been it's like tracking, right? It's kind of tracking me and kind of that's what I don't want. I know what I'm doing. I think one of the things that we look at, which has kind of definitely improved our activity, and then also when we implement it, is some element of task management. So essentially, like in Hubspot, we have a task manager, and that's really used religiously now. So, and I've used a lot of to-dos to task managers, etc. in the past, but completely kind of fallen in love with the way that Task Manager works now within HubSpot. The ability to associate it to records, the ability to associate to deals, the ability to tag certain team members in that you need to be involved in, a certain task. And then obviously, ultimately, the great thing about this is it is mobilized as well. So kind of now regular routine for me is up in the morning, first thing I look at is kind of that task list and kind of see a breakout of the day, how that is. So I think the ability to not only create tasks for you, but then also tasks, for other individuals. Now, also on the back of that, we touched upon this, but we've kind of set up automated tasks as well. So if, for example, somebody is not contacted after a certain amount of time, there's a task associated to follow up, for example. If you're engaged with a prospect, you can automatically then create a task on the back of it to activate. Also things like looking at generating cross-department tasks as well. So for example, when you close a deal out, you get the contract in, the task is associated to our finance team to raise an invoice, for example. So all of that, again, just reduces time and administration, right? Because, just with a couple of kind of little automated tasks, you can remove that perhaps internal email or kind of tasks that you have to do. So I'd say that kind of time management piece is really crucial on this as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it makes I totally agree with that. Actually, makes a lot of sense.
I should say as well, just on the back of that. Sorry, I'm just going to say on the back of that task management piece as well. We a lot of people use meeting schedulers as well. So Calendly and stuff like this. That's been invaluable, especially when kind of COVID as well, because embedding the Zoom link or Teams or whatever the case may be inside your organization, it really negates that back and forth. Hey, listen, I can do here, you can do here, let's do there. Again, just wasting time, right? Here's a link to my calendar. You choose when you want to see me. And they click one button, 2 tasks, and then straight away that's embedded in the calendar, the Zoom link's embedded, everything's done for you. Versus that kind of manual back and forth as well of trying to organize a meeting. So I'd say the meeting scheduler from an automated and time-saving perspective has been crucial, especially during kind of COVID.
Sure. No, that makes sense. And yeah, you're right. But it just saves all of that kind of headache of going backwards and forwards 5 or 6 times, right? Trying to figure out when people are free. I think one thing that isn't an obvious CRM feature, but it's one that we use, and I think it's been so kind of fundamental to what we've been doing over the last few years is the website basically, right? So our website is actually built on our CRM, which is Hubspot, which then means that every single piece of content, whether it's a blog article, whether it's ebooks, even lead generation campaigns and landing pages, all of that is all basically fully linked and integrated into the CRM, right? So again, we don't have to have multiple systems. I mean, to the point where we can even build audiences for campaigns on our CRM, right? And again, it's a natural thing, right? It's a no-brainer almost, because you've got all of your contacts sitting inside of your CRM. Well, actually, if you want to create an audience based on those contacts that are in your CRM and use them on LinkedIn or use them on Facebook or use them on any other channel, there's 2 buttons on HubSpot that just allow you to do it. But I think just having that data and having the website on for CRM, I think is huge, because it actually also allows us to look at the value of each page on our website. So which pages are most valuable, not in terms of clicks, but actually revenue, right? Which page is attributed the most revenue for us is actually quite easy to find out inside of HubSpot. And again, it's just having that all integrated in there. And again, a very kind of non-obvious CRM feature, but one that's just super powerful.
Yeah, definitely. Look, I mean, I think I guess we're getting close to that hour point, so we want to be on an hour, but I think we have to talk about as well just the analytical reporting side, you know, in the dashboards. So gone are the days where you have to pull out data, extract it into an Excel sheet, run hundreds of pivot tables to kind of see, you know, where people are at, what the numbers look like, you know, and see who's interested in what. The real kind of I guess trophy associated to all of this data collection is that dashboard, right? You know, and obviously using HubSpot, we have this phenomenal kind of spread, as it were, that we can, you know, pluck all of the data points, now also cross-object data points as well, to allow us to kind of build out these dashboards that save, again, an incredible amount of time, you know, just by one click, seeing, you know, where we're sitting at today, where we were this time last month, fewer two clicks, and then also the ability to pull out individualized reports and automate those. So, you know, slap bang on a Sunday morning, report comes in, so you can kind of see how the week's shaping up. It may be the amount of leads that came through last week. It might be the amount of meetings. And again, back to that kind of real-time analysis of data you can start to pull in. And I think that, you know, what the kind of more evolved CRMs are now providing is that viewpoint in very simplistic terms, right? So you can obviously get very deep into the data, but if you just want a snapshot, you know, as a biz dev guy, perhaps, you know, how you doing, you know, how's your performance, what were you doing 6 months ago versus now? It gives you a real chance just to kind of pull in a game without, you know, a whole host of administrative tasks associated to it.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, that just reminded me of one thing, because again, look, I use a couple of different dashboards for my reporting, right? I just want to get a sense check of where things are. So rather than go inside and start digging around for data, I've got these reports and dashboards that are just created and are live in real time. But it just reminded me, you've created leaderboards for certain clients, haven't you? But you've also created loser boards as well, haven't you? Just for certain leaders that we've worked with.
Yeah. There's depending on who those clients are, you can create. And this is something that actually is interesting. We've spoken to a few other agencies as of our DXG, and they've done it similarly for their clients. So yeah, you can have a leaderboard, but you can also have a loser board. You know, you kind of in real time see where you are, and that can be something enough to really kind of let's say excite the business development or sales team to kind of, you know, move into action, as it were. No one wants to be on that board. So as much as you want to be on the leaderboard, you definitely don't want to be on the loser board. So yeah, it's again using the data constructively.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I don't even think that loser board ever gets used, but the point is, people know it exists, and so they don't want to be on it, right? It's quite
that's right.
It's just one of those things that, because it's being tracked, may not be looked at, but because it's being tracked, it's influencing and impacting behavior, which I think is, and look, I think that's a big part of this. I think if we, you know, we've been talking about an hour, you know, for an hour now, but I guess having a CRM in place more than anything else is really about behavioral change within an organization, right? If I was going to summarize, you know, if someone said to me, okay, look, what's the benefit? We can talk about sales, and we can talk about tracking, and we can talk about, you know, predictive analysis and stuff. But if you actually want to really influence change and influence behavioral change within an organization, sometimes it is just a simple system like a CRM that can create so many different changes, right? Just the fact that if I want to pull up Andrew's sales activity, I can do it. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but the fact that I can do it will may suddenly have an impact from a kind of behavioral perspective. And I think that's so much more significant for organizations, right? When they get to a certain point where, okay, processes are being followed, but actually other right behaviors being followed. And I think this is where platforms like this, really kind of come to the fore. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, 100%. And in full agreement. I mean, I think interestingly there as well, behavioral change in a positive sense. So, I go back to the time when I heard a story of a sales guy here. He rang one of his sales execs and said, "Where are you?" And he goes, "I'm down in Dira." He goes, "Okay, find someone." He goes, "Okay, give that person the phone." And he asked that person where he was. from a sales management perspective. So it's positive behavioral change as opposed to fearful change. I think that's what the CRM does, right? Because you do have, as soon as people start to see this as a wealth of knowledge, as opposed to and usage as opposed to tracking, that again that again can help. Because look at it from a marketing perspective. They've had the luxury of tracking and optimizing for years. It's just something you do. You look at the numbers, you see what's happened, you reallocate investment wherever it is. But from a sales piece, still it's relatively new. But with one centralized CRM, it all kind of speaks the same language, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we should leave it there, Andrew. We're past time again. Good to see you.
Good seeing you.
Thanks to everyone who's tuned in and who's stuck with us despite kind of going over time. Look forward to next week as well. So we continue with this summer series. And I think actually, guys, if there is any kind of topics that you want us to look at, let us know. Actually, we're not around next week. Next week is off, right?
Yeah, next week it is Eid here, so we're expecting our viewers to take some time off as much as us. So then we'll be back the following week, Amit, obviously, and we'll kind of hit continue with that summer series from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. All right, we'll have a good couple of weeks, and I'll catch you in 2 weeks, Andrew.
Excellent, good stuff.
All right,
see you later, guys.
Thanks, Bye. All right, take care. Bye.